Next topic is peritoneum, and peritoneum is the largest serous membrane in the body. What it is that it's a connective tissue membrane that covers all of the organs of the abdominal pelvic cavities, on the outside, and in between the serous layer membrane there's liquid called serous fluid. This area between the digestive organs is filled with liquid, and this liquid is called serous fluid, and it's the area in between the organs is known as the peritoneal cavity. So let's take a look at the peritoneum. So if we're going to zoom in on this image, this is the mid-sagittal section showing the peritoneal folds, the folds of the peritoneum, and the peritoneum lines this bluish line indicating the membrane position. It lines the inside of the abdominal pelvic cavity. Okay, and then when it reaches like a certain organ, for example, this is an organ called urinary bladder. It travels all along the outside of the urinary bladder. Then it folds and it covers the next organ called the uterus. This is the female body, so uterus is where the baby develops. Then it covers the anus. This is the rectum, this is the rectum. And then it covers the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity. The intestines, covers all of the intestines. The intestines look kind of funny like circles because there's actually a tube that's been cut, so we're looking at its cross section. Okay, it covers the intestines. It goes in for all of these intestines. There's lots of curves and coils in the intestines, so there's going to be lots of these little caverns that peritoneum has to travel into. And it covers all of the intestines, the jejunum. Then it goes up more, and then it covers this is transverse colon, larger than the small intestine. Transverse colon, then there's going to be this fold of peritoneum filled with fat. This fold of peritoneum is called the greater omentum. I'll show you next picture. It's like the apron on top of the intestines. Okay, and then it goes up. It covers the stomach, the liver, encloses the liver. Okay, so all of this is peritoneum. Okay, not every single organ is covered by peritoneum. Some organs stay kind of like behind the peritoneum. For example, duodenum. There's also going to be blood vessels. There's kidneys not shown here. The uterus, the bladder, they're staying kind of like on the outside of the peritoneum, not on the inside. And these organs are called retroperitoneal organs because they're like in the back of the peritoneum. And on the inside of the peritoneum, there's liquid. And this area in red, it's called the peritoneal cavity. So peritoneum is made out of several parts. There's going to be, first of all, the peritoneum that covers the walls of the abdominal cavity and not the organs. This is called parietal peritoneum. This is parietal peritoneum. And the peritoneum that folds inwards and covers the organs, this is called visceral peritoneum. Okay, visceral means adjacent to the organs, so visceral peritoneum. Okay, parietal peritoneum, it's this one. Okay. Then the visceral peritoneum has several sections. Some of these folds of the peritoneum have specific names. So on page 892 in your chapter 24, there's a list of these peritoneal structures. Let's see if there's a list in the slides. Oh gosh, it's not loading. Okay. I'm just going to go over them here. So they're highlighted in darker colors. So first of all, there's the greater omentum. So the greater omentum is this aprony fold filled with fat that covers the front of the small intestine. So this is called the greater omentum. Here's its picture. That's not loading. I'm going to show you in the next video. The next part, so greater omentum is the largest peritoneal folds that drapes over the transverse colon and coils of the small intestines, known as a fatty apron. The greater omentum normally contains a considerable amount of adipose tissue. In adipose tissue, the adipose tissue content can greatly expand with weight gain, contributing to the characteristic beer belly seen in some overweight people. There's also many lymph nodes in the greater omentum that contribute macrophages and antibody-producing plasma cells that help combat and contain infections of the GI tract. The next part of the visceral peritoneum is called a falciform ligament. I don't see it here, so we're going to skip it for now. The falciform ligament is related to the liver, and we saw it earlier in the liver, but I'll show you another picture of it later. The next part of the visceral peritoneum is the lesser omentum. Lesser omentum, it's right here. It's the fold of peritoneum that connects the peritoneum around the liver to the peritoneum around the stomach. So this is stomach, and this is the lesser omentum right here. So the lesser omentum connects the stomach, is the anterior fold in the serosa of the stomach and duodenum, and it connects the stomach and the duodenum to the liver. It is the pathway for blood vessels entering the liver and contains the hepatic portal vein. So that's the vein that carries all of the nutrients from the digestive tract into the liver for processing, and contains the hepatic portal artery as well. That's the artery that brings fresh blood into the liver, and it contains the common bile duct, the duct that leads from the liver to the duodenum, along with some lymph nodes. So this lesser omentum is a kind of like a it's like a connective tissue that holds lots of important blood vessels and tubes, like the hepatic portal vein, the hepatic portal artery, and the common bile duct. The next part of the peritoneum is the mesentery. So mesentery is the part of the peritoneum that binds jejunum and ileum of the small intestine to the posterior abdominal wall. So it's kind of like all of this stuff filled with fat. This right here in the back, and also these. So all of this stuff filled with fat. This is called a mesentery. Mesentery. Okay, mesentery. The mesentery is the largest peritoneal fold. It's typically laden with fat and contributes extensively to the large abdomen in obese individuals. So it's filled with lots of fat normally, but there's more fat if a person has more fat on their body. It extends from the posterior abdominal wall to wrap around the small intestine and then returns to its origin, forming a double layered structure. Between the two layers are blood vessels and lymphatic vessels and lymph nodes. So this part contains lots of the blood vessels that absorb nutrients from the small intestine, and especially the jejunum and the ileum. So the longest parts of the small intestine. The next part and the last part of this peritoneum is the mesocolon right here, and it's this piece right here. This is the transverse colon right here, and this is the pancreas. So it's kind of like this little connector between the pancreas and the transverse colon. So the mesocolon binds the transverse colon and sigmoid colon of the large intestine to the posterior abdominal wall, to the back of the abdominal cavity. It also carries blood and lymphatic vessels to the intestine, so it contains the capillaries that absorb lots of the nutrients from the transverse colon, especially water, and they allow the movement as muscular contractions mix and move the luminal contents along the GI tract.